Hi, my name is Kristen Recker and I teach fourth grade. I am going to be reflecting on a lesson on equivalent fractions that I taught today. As I launched the lesson whole group, I modeled the use of clear geoboards as a way to investigate equivalent fractions. In my whole group, I always start by posing a problem so that students can activate their strategies and start to make connections and question what strategies might work for the lesson. During the launch, even the students were it's that point where students are starting to say, oh, and even before they've gone to do their investigation, they're starting to make connections. And I was surprised today to see that students were making connections between whole number operations and applying them to fractions. They started to recognize the doubling and halving relationship of finding equivalent fractions where 1/2 can be the same as 2/4, can be the same as 4/8. And even before I had given them an opportunity to work with that model, they were able to start to see it. And I realized that in the past I hadn't taught it with that full model. I taught it with a partial model on paper or with numbers, and students hadn't been as successful in being able to justify and reason about why it works to have doubling and halving in equivalent fractions. And with that full model, I was able to see that change because the students were really catching on. One of the other things I heard during the lesson was students making mistakes with how they're representing the fractions 8/6 instead of 6/8. But in my partner pair share, I heard students questioning and critiquing the other students and challenging them to use that precise language. But not only that, but explaining in their own language how the numerator and the denominator are related and why it works and why it's important to get the fraction correct. I made 2 decisions during the lesson on the fly. One was the recording sheet asked them for equations. I know that my students are 2 grade levels below in fractions, so instead of that, I really just wanted them to think about that relationship of doubling and halving, and I challenged them to write those relationships in their own words, to talk to each other about it. And then the other decision I made on the fly was that was actually supposed to be a addition and subtraction lesson using the geoboards, but because they were so interested and so engaged in finding the relationships of doubling and halving, the conjecture I posed was, does that relationship, can it always be proven to be true and consistent with fractions as well? So I changed the question and I changed the recording sheet, and the kids were super engaged. And when they came back for the whole group summary, I was seeing kids persevering to make connections between the name of the fraction and the parts and that relationship. And they were really able to reason using the geoboards, which was change for me, and I learned that providing that full model for students can give them that developmental understanding if they're not ready to use that more abstract model. So that's what I learned. I hope the kids learned something too, and I hope you enjoy this. Bye-bye.